Ultra. Justin is an accomplished manufacturing operations professional. He has held leadership roles at ERP software vendors and manufacturing organizations, adding his expertise in project management, supply chain management, Lean Six Sigma, and ERP. With deep domain experience in the field, as well as significant education, Justin has taught supply chain management, project management, and operations management as an associate professor at the undergraduate and executive MBA levels, and has been a guest lecturer at Morgan State University and Rutgers University. Justin is a professional Scrum Master, a certified supply chain professional, is certified in blockchain from Cornell University, and is the author of the book Critical Success Factors in Enterprise Resource Planning Implementation in U.S. Manufacturing. You can also view our event section of the Ultra Consultants website to see if one of Justin's 5 TEDx talks will be in your area. His first will be at the Rochester Institute of Technology on February 23rd, where he will be discussing the next disruptive technology affecting all industries, blockchain. And so with that, I will hand it over to you, Justin.
Thank you, Kristen. And thank you all for joining us in today's discussion. With recent advancements in technology, we've experienced a number of reboots regarding how we operate in today's competitive environment. With the emergence of Industry 4.0 and Web 3.0, we have yet another reboot with BI 2.0. Typically, when we engage in a business process improvement initiative with clients in the field, the primary reason for this project is to increase the visibility and accuracy of the data throughout the enterprise. Because many organizations operate with a number of disparate systems, they sometimes are overwhelmed with the data, and it's sometimes difficult to consolidate. Although this Dilbert cartoon was initiated to create humor, the reality in this sketch is that instead of using ERP applications and BI tools as decision support systems, some organizations are using these technologies as decision-dependent systems. Before we get into BI 2.0, let's first discuss how we got here. We begin with data warehousing in the 80s, where SQL was first introduced to extract data from BI applications. And we then moved to more automated tools that eliminated the need for SQL resources. As we moved to the 90s, we began to hear the term data mining, where we were able to create simulations to build and implement the correct model, such as simulations to select the correct forecasting method for planning and procurement purposes. With the new century, vendors gave us dashboards and out-of-the-box KPIs they identified as plug-and-play solutions, but these offerings were often rigid in nature and very difficult to manipulate. Finally, now that we're nearing the end of what I refer to as BI 1.5, big data became a buzzword with the introduction of machine learning to assist in operational decision-making. With these tools up to this point requiring technical expertise, BI 2.0 introduces a new age in data analytics. So, although CIOs rank BI as the top differentiating technology, according to Gartner, only 32% of organizations adopt this technology. Why is that? This may be due to the complex algorithms created for KPIs that can only be understood by data scientists and data engineers. In the field, we see that a number of vendors tout that they have over 100 out-of-the-box KPIs, but the reality with these KPIs is that they're more technical in nature, and leaders are still looking for data to make more strategic decisions. Another issue we see in the field is the gap in the vendor's implementation methodologies for operational and financial modules versus the BI tools. Just as these vendors institute cross-functional teams during the base implementation, the same should hold true for a BI phase instead of only including technical teams and business analysts. This approach creates somewhat of a bottleneck in that organizations are depending upon those with deep technical expertise, limiting their ability to leverage these tools as a competitive advantage. With conventional IT leadership, BI is only being leveraged by roughly 10% of the organization's employees. Because of this, some executives feel that they have failed to realize their return on investment from the implementation due to delays in receiving critical data or the lack of information once they do receive that data. With that, what if we could turn each end user of an organization into data scientists using artificial intelligence and machine learning? Yes, Amazon, Apple, and Netflix pioneered this idea, but now this concept is being brought to small and medium enterprises. In Ultra's recent State of the Economy report, we cite the results of a study by Spiceworks in which IT decision makers noted that artificial intelligence will be one of the technological trends to make the biggest impact this year. Although AI comes in at 21% versus IT automation at 41%, what if BI vendors created an analytics as a service solution or a plug and play offering that eliminated the need for extensive training or experts specialized in business intelligence or business analytics? So think of Alexa within your ERP application, where you could ask the system to, let's say, show you sales in the Northeast for last month, and you immediately receive an output or response. With vendors like Infor making this vision a reality, there may be a shift in this survey if professionals were educated on the BI and AI capabilities within the enterprise. With that, let's take a view of today's poll. So for the first question, does your organization currently have a business intelligence solution? 25% said yes, 63% said no, and then 13% were unsure. For the second question, wow. Where do you believe your organization is regarding your business intelligence maturity? 13% said excellent, 25% said average, and the majority at 63% said poor. And for the last question, do you foresee your organization implementing artificial intelligence to improve decision-making within the next 2 years? 25% said yes, 50% said no, and 25% were unsure. So I'd be interested, so for that 50% in question 3, I'd be interested to see if you would change your answer based on our previous discussion. If so, please put your comments within the chat box. And again, thank you all for taking this poll. Next, we're going to have Mike Mazzoni from Infor, where he's going to share Infor's answer to the data rat race issue we previously discussed. Mike, floor is yours.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Justin. So I'm going to go ahead and steal the screen from you and share my screen. And as a part of today's presentation, I've got a few slides that I want to run through, but we're also going to jump into our live application, specifically our Infor Cloud Suite distribution solution, to see some of what we're discussing in action. And so first of all, the first thing that I want to touch on is this idea that big data and actionable, making that data actionable is really pervasive throughout our entire organization. If we look across all the different operational areas of the business, of the distributor, big data can become critical in terms of better decision making, better visibility into what's happening, better directed activities. And so very specifically, today we're going to be looking at kind of breaking that down into how can we consume that information, how can we leverage it to run the business more optimally. Specifically, we're going to look at, okay, business intelligence still is a critical component of our organization. What are the tools that are available? What are the tools that we offer at Infor to provide for visibility into that critical data, whether that's key performance indicators at a very high level or drill down all the way down to the transaction level detail. We're also going to be looking at how can we take advantage of that data? Are there tools out there that exist? So specifically, we're going to be discussing a module within our Cloud Suite distribution solution at Infor called Pricing Science, where it's going to drive us towards better use of the data and really optimization of our pricing strategy. And then finally, we are going to look specifically at some of the artificial intelligence concepts that we're approaching, that we're tackling at Infor, and then some of the very specific use cases that our customers are taking advantage of today. So I mentioned the first thing we wanted to touch on was specific analytics and business intelligence. And really what I want to focus on is this concept of predefined content and the ability to take advantage of that predefined content, but then really drill down to the detail, create your own filters to perform really what we would refer to more as an ad hoc analysis. At Infor, in our distribution group, we're very focused on providing that out-of-the-box content. You can see some of the areas of focus that we have today. So I'm going to jump over now into our live application. And within that live application, again, focus on that first specific area. So what you're seeing on the screen here is our what we would refer to as a home page. And this often can be a mashup of tasks, of information, of calendar detail that I want to be able to consume, but I also may want to be able to embed. And it's important to think about embedding business intelligence and analytics throughout the application to make the tools more friendly, consumer friendly, and usable by your end users. But really what I want to toggle over here to is our distribution content. And as I jump in, I made reference to the fact that it's critical for us not only to provide a strong business intelligence and analytic tool, but also to give some out-of-the-box content that is easily consumable by our customers. So, for example, here I've got a home page that shows me quick access to accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounting detail, sales information. If I were to click into the accounts payable detail, you can see that, again, we've provided some of that pre-canned content. Again, whether it's some of those KPIs as identified up top or down to the vendor or transaction level. You'll notice as I hover over these values, I have the opportunity to click and drill into the transaction level details. So I have $1 million in open AP. Well, what are the vendors that make up that $1 million? And show me now really the vendor level detail. Maybe I want to come down and get into the vendor itself to see the transaction level detail. And maybe I want the ability to quickly export or share this information or even manipulate the view of information on the screen. Notice as I drill down, it's taking me through and leaving a breadcrumb of the filter criteria that I've selected. Now, all of this is critical, and I'm just going to come back to that accounts payable starting point here where we saw the mashup of information. All of this is critical and is going to be important to your customers with, to your end users with regards to how they can consume and take action on this information. What we hear a lot, though, is, hey, my users need the ability to go out and create their own reports or views of the information. They need to be able to get at the data and do it themselves. And I think what we find is, yes, you know, writing an ad hoc report or query or dashboard from scratch may be critical for some users, but for the majority of users, it's not necessarily providing them that from scratch ad hoc capability, but really providing them stronger filter tools to be able to come in and say, well, I'm looking at a specific type of transaction. I'm looking at a specific time period. Maybe I want to look for a specific vendor or a specific group of vendors. So the ability to now come in and filter down within the dashboards, within the reports themselves to get to the information that's critical to me and really make it more meaningful from a consumption perspective. And then the other thing is easy ability to create those filters just simply by doing things like highlighting areas in the application to filter down to a specific set of data. So again, this is kind of that, you know, Justin referred to it as kind of those early stages of business intelligence. And, you know, we need to be able to have the data accessible. We need to be able to provide the data in a usable format as, you know, pre-configured content, but we also need to be able to give the users the ability to quickly get at the, you know, down to the transaction level detail, to filter down easily through embedded ad hoc query filters, and to really highlight and drill down on the information from a visual perspective where it makes sense. So that was really that first component that I wanted to touch on. The second area that I wanted to get into is, okay, now we've talked about business intelligence, we've talked about analytics through our Cloud Suite distribution and Burst Analytics engine. Okay, what other tools are out there that potentially are pre-configured modules that allow me to take advantage of this big data and look for opportunities to get at things like better segmentation or optimization of data, and ultimately maybe look at you know, predictive analytics to determine, okay, who's going to be, you know, where is the data going to impact the way our customers behave, the way our products behave, and ultimately optimization. How can we look at optimizing a particular area of our organization? So at Infor, we actually have a group of folks called our Dynamic Science Labs, and they have worked with our development teams to build a module called Pricing Science. And Pricing Science really has three key components. First, it's going to look and help our customers to build better customer segmentation across their customer base. And this customer segmentation isn't just based on things like sales dollars or profitability. It's also looking at things like loyalty metrics and cost to serve analysis. So it's leveraging all of that data, all of that metadata that exists within your sales history, your invoice file, all of the data that you've accumulated just simply by running your business, by processing transactions on a day-to-day basis. We're now taking advantage of that to look at better customer segmentation across the organization. It's also looking at things like product price sensitivity. Where is a customer likely more sensitive to the pricing on a particular product or group of products versus less sensitive on a particular product or group of products? And obviously, when a customer is less sensitive, there's a greater opportunity for margin optimization. There's a greater opportunity for profit. Finally, how can this tool help us, again, by analyzing all this great data, all this big data that we've got out there just from running the business? How can it help us to optimize our profitability by making price recommendations? And how can we quickly and easily implement those price recommendations to start to gain the benefits of the optimization? So again, I'm going to quickly toggle out of my PowerPoint presentation into the live application. And in this case, I'm going to go up to my app switcher, and I'm going to navigate away from the analytics dashboards and into the Pricing Science for Distribution module. So as I come into this module, I'm just going to point out a few things based on the amount of time we have today. And of course, any of this, we'd be happy to go into greater detail with you. But you will notice there's a number of tabs across the top. You'll see, for example, we're able to go and either extract data and pull new data in, or review the data that's being used for the optimization. So going back to what we were talking about, right? All of this great data, this big data, how can we take advantage of it? Here, we're able to pull data in from the transactional system, and we can review that information. But really where I want to focus on are a couple of these other tabs. So specifically the customer segmentation tab. In this case, I'm able to quickly drill down to a customer segmentation run that I had done earlier. I want you to notice that here are the results of that segmentation. And I can see, again, how each of the 3 groups that I've created have scored based on not only overall score, but the key performance indicators that I mentioned earlier, right? Sales, profitability, loyalty, cost to serve. And more specifically, if I go into the configuration and we take a look at how this run was configured, there's a whole bunch of settings that I've opted in over here on the left. So you can see the configuration categories. I'm not going to go through every field or every category, but what I do want to point out is, okay, how important is sales to me? How much weight do I want to put on sales? How important is profitability? How much weight do I want to put there? And oh, by the way, is margin percent more important, or is margin dollars amount more important? But then we start to get into some of the additional data elements, right? From a loyalty perspective, starting to look at things like the total number of orders, the days between orders, the number of brands or product lines, so the product spread that this customer buys from me. Starting to analyze things like a recent sales trend. As we go further, we start to look at cost to serve KPIs. You know, average number of lines per order, dollars per line. How long do they take to pay me? Are we constantly overriding pricing? Do they do a lot of non-stock? Do they do a lot of returns? All of this information, by the way, that is simply sitting in your sales history. It's sitting in your invoice detail just based on running your business every day, processing those transactions. We have, you know, I talk to customers, I talk to distributors all the time, and they tell me this is the kind of the information that they're trying to get at. This is the kind of information they're trying to accumulate to better understand how their customers behave. What we've done through pricing science is we've built the utility to take advantage of all that great information, all that data that you accumulate just by running the business, and then turn around and show you, based on the weighting that you've defined in the configuration, show you those results. And not only that, the ability to quickly click down into the individual groupings to see how those groups scored, to look all the way down to the individual customer level, to potentially reassign customers where we believe we need to move. You know, this customer shouldn't be here. They potentially belong in one of these other customer segments. But really then to get all the way down, if I were to click into the customer themselves and see how the customer scored and see the raw data, the big data that we're talking about that actually was included in this particular segmentation ranking. So, you know, powerful tools that now are leveraging all that great information, but, you know, helping me, assisting me based on this configured pricing science module to just simply set up the way I want to look at things, run the configuration, review the results, make adjustments as necessary. So that first step is grouping our customers or segmenting our customers. If I go over to the final tab here, and I'm going to skip the product visibility, although I discussed that briefly a few moments ago. Here's where the system actually then is going to turn around, or the pricing science module within Cloud Suite Distribution is going to turn around, and it's going to make those recommendations with regards to here is where we think we can be from a price perspective. Now, in this case, this is looking at groups of customers and groups of products. So we're looking at grouping as opposed to specific customer or specific customer and ship to and product combination. But we certainly have the ability to look at those different combinations from a price optimization perspective. In this case, it's showing me, okay, for that customer product group combination, you know, we're seeing, okay, what have we been able to achieve recently? What do we think, what's the recommended margin? So this is actually what the pricing science module is recommending based on the analysis. What's the recent margin been? What's the target margin for this particular grouping? And so therefore, what have we been able to achieve? What's the suggested change? What was the historical revenue? And what do we think the possible change in revenue could be if we successfully implement this change? There also, I can identify the visibility scores. How visible is this change going to be potentially to the customers? The one other factor I'll point out here, the fact that it's showing me a low confidence indicator. So from a statistical perspective, how effectively do we think, or how statistically significant do we think this recommendation is? And I can tell you right away, if I were to look and see low confidence, I can almost assure you that's because we just don't have enough data in the back end to support the recommendation. In fact, it's basically saying, hey, you've only sold this type of product to this customer a couple times. You've been able to get 22 margin points in the past. You ought to just go for it and bump it up to 22, because that seems to be the value you can achieve. So obviously, this is a very high-level run-through of pricing science in our pricing science for distribution module inside of Cloud Suite Distribution. But I think it's a great example of how we can not only start to accumulate and analyze the data, but how we can make it actionable, predictive, and usable for optimization across the organization. So I'm going to toggle back here again to the PowerPoint presentation and just move to the next slide here. And the final topic that I wanted to discuss was around artificial intelligence, and truly how we're leveraging artificial intelligence in our strategy at Infor from an AI perspective. And I think when we look at artificial intelligence, you know, we're looking at it really in terms of kind of 4 key concepts. And so they're identified here in those 4 columns on your screen. If we start to look at each of these concepts, the first, you know, from left to right, process automation. And I think from a digital disruption or digital transformation perspective, automation should be one of the key areas that all companies are looking at. Where do we have an opportunity to automate a process, a manual process, or a repetitive process in our organization? And so we're always looking, how can we leverage artificial intelligence to build that automation into our solutions and into our customers' operation. The second, and we're going to see some live examples of this today, is this concept of natural language processing. You know, the ability, as Justin mentioned, to almost bring an Alexa type environment into our organization to gain quick access to information, quick navigation, those kinds of things. The third column there talks about image recognition. So, you know, here's where we have, again, opportunities with artificial intelligence to, through the recognition of an image, of a video, of a document, start to automate processes. And then finally, data-driven automation, where we're talking more about machine learning and deep learning. Again, just some examples of each of these columns. We started on the left, automation. You know, an order goes on credit hold, and there's a price override. There's you know, these types of transactional processes that sometimes require an approval or require multiple steps. Where can we look at leveraging artificial intelligence automation throughout our organization? The second column, again, we're going to talk about this, but things like a digital assistant, right, where we have a tool called Coleman within our Infor solutions within Cloud Suite Distribution. And Coleman can become not only my artificial intelligence platform, but my digital assistant. And so we'll see some examples of that. We talked about those last 2 columns, image recognition and, you know, machine learning and deep learning, where we're really looking at the most advanced layers of artificial intelligence. And we have some customers in our at Infor who are starting to take advantage of the advanced algorithms of machine learning to look at opportunities to improve their organization, whether it's you know, being able to having the artificial intelligence solution or Coleman be able to predict stockouts in advance and those types of scenarios. And so we're excited about, you know, where the artificial intelligence is going within our organization and how our customers are going to be able to take advantage of it. Just a couple of quick use cases around artificial intelligence, and then we'll go in and again look at the live application. So, you know, we're going to focus today's presentation on the capabilities that are currently available and that our customers are taking advantage of at Infor with regards to the natural language processing or the, you know, that digital assistant I was referring to. so things like asking those questions, as Justin referred to earlier. How are sales today? How many open quotes do I have? How much money does this customer owe me? Please send me a copy of this invoice. Those types of scenarios can now be built into our Coleman Artificial Intelligence and Coleman Digital Assistant platform. So again, I'm going to toggle over into the live application. And in this case, I'm going to move out of the pricing science module. And I'm actually going to jump into our Infor chat module. And so in the upper right-hand corner, I've got a little chat icon. And that takes me over here and brings me into my chat environment. And I want you to notice something. So we can, within Cloud Suite Distribution, we can create and maintain what we refer to as different chat groups, whether they be operational areas within the organization, maybe they're project focused. We can start to do things like embed drillbacks into the different areas of the application, start to share and index documents as a part of these groups. But we also have the concept of teammates within our Infor chat environment. And so here I can see there's a number of teammates that I'm connected to. I can see both Brandon and Diane are currently online. So if I wanted to have a conversation with Diane, for example, I can come over here and I can start to have a conversation to share documents, etc., with Diane. But I want you to notice something. There's another teammate here, and that's at the top of the list, and that's Coleman. Coleman, by the way, is the name that we have selected for our artificial intelligence platform. And just a little bit of background, if anyone has seen the movie Hidden Figures, Coleman is actually Catherine Coleman Johnson. She was the main character in that movie who worked for NASA. So we have worked with her family and her organization and labeled our artificial intelligence platform Coleman. So that's where that name comes from. But what Coleman now becomes is another one of my teammates. I can now have a conversation with Coleman. I can ask Coleman questions. I can have Coleman take me to different areas of the solution. And so you'll notice at the bottom, I've got the ability to come in here, and I've got the ability to type a question, but I've also got the ability to ask Coleman a question in this example. And so that's what I'm going to do here real quick. And I think we all know what today's date is. It's a very important date on the calendar. Of course, I'm not prepared for it to be Valentine's Day, but I'm just going to ask Coleman, what should I get my wife for Valentine's Day?
If you haven't gotten her anything yet, you might be in trouble.
So, of course, that's a very silly, simple example of a question and response, but she's right. In this case, Coleman is right. I am probably in trouble since I haven't gotten anything yet. But let's look at those more realistic use cases. And so, as a user of the system, I may want to be, I may need to know, okay, when is the purchase order going to arrive? So again, here's an example of where I can come in. What is the scheduled receipt date for PO 1010975?
What is the PO number suffix?
0. Of course, Coleman, during the demonstration, takes a moment longer to respond than it did when I was warming up earlier and getting ready for this. All right.
The receipt date is February 14th, 2019.
There you go. So not only can you see the response on the screen, but Coleman responded through the voice, through the speaker on my machine. So that PO is actually scheduled to arrive today. So there's one example. Now, could I have navigated to the transactional system, to the ERP within Cloud Suite Distribution, and navigated to the purchase order inquiry screen, searched for and selected that purchase order, drilled down to the detail to see the estimated receipt date? Yes, I certainly could have done that and found the same piece of information. But in this case, I was able to quickly and easily just simply ask Coleman for that information. Coleman went into the system, found the transaction, and responded with the information that I was looking for. So just a couple of other examples. If I was to, for example, I wanted to know how much a particular customer owes me. What is the customer balance?
What is the customer number?
101.
The customer balance is $4,473,149.63.
Okay, so this customer owes me a lot of money, I will be perfectly honest. I do a lot of these types of presentations. I'm very good at selling stuff. Apparently, I'm not so good at collecting cash from my customers. The next question I might want to know is, you know, what are the year-to-date sales for customer 101?
The year-to-date sales is $389.95.
So not only does that customer owe me a lot of money, but they've stopped buying from me. Now that could be on my end. That could be because we're stopping orders from a collections perspective. But again, I've got quick access to information. You know, in this case, I've got cumulative information that I've got access to just simply by asking those questions. And it's the same whether I'm using the voice or the microphone here in an Alexa type fashion, or whether I was to actually key those questions into my chat with Coleman, I would get the same response. You know, finally, I might want to take advantage of quickly navigating to some specific area of the system. And so, you know, again, I can just come in here, take me to burst sales. And simply by asking the question, not only did Coleman embed the drill back into the chat conversation, but it took me right to my sales executive dashboard, where I can start to look at some of those analytics that we started out this conversation talking about. So, you know, in summation, we're very excited. We think we are providing our customers with the tools that they need, not only to be able to get at the data and analyze the data through our burst analytics engine, not only with the predefined content that's specific to our distribution customer base and the other industries we serve, but we're also developing and incorporating predefined actionable modules such as pricing science, which is taking advantage of all that great data, but building functionality into the solution to guide you towards better segmentation and ultimately price optimization and a greater profitability. And then finally, we're moving full steam ahead with introducing artificial intelligence tools, whether it's the simple digital assistant that we just saw in live action here, where I can interact with our solution, with our data through, in this case, our Coleman artificial intelligence digital assistant, but also looking at opportunities for optimization and ultimately really those advanced algorithms and machine learning tools where we can start to look at predictive analytics across the organization. So I want to thank everybody for their time. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Ultra to summarize the meeting.
Apologies, I was on mute. Thanks so much, Mike.
There you go.
I'm going to go ahead and share our upcoming webinars with the audience today. So give me just one moment. And I hope you're not in too much trouble. Could I recommend that maybe you give your wife a recording of this webinar?
That's not a bad idea. Thank you.
All right, perfect. And to our audience, you still have time to get in your questions. We'll be moving on to Q&A in just a moment. I see we've got a couple in through the chat feature, and it looks like we've got something in through Q&A. So as far as our upcoming webinars, next Thursday, you can join us for the Power of Fully Integrated ERP on February 21st. Then the following week, we have B2B e-commerce and integrated ERP, improve the customer experience. And then to start off our March webinars, we'll be working with our partners, Kestrel Management for food safety, compliance, and ERP, how to stay on the safe side. So that's March 7th. And you can register for any of these events at ultraconsultants.com/ERP-education. And with that, I will hand it over to Justin for Q&A. Justin?
Yes, thank you, Kristen. So we have quite a few questions that come through. And start off with Carl. Carl had 2 questions. So the first question is, will AI put people out of jobs? I'll let Mike answer this one first, and then I'll add to it.
Sure. So I think that historically, and I've been working like Justin with distribution companies for over 20 years. I think historically what we're looking for through technology is we're looking for better visibility into information, and then ultimately, and especially more recently, we're looking for opportunities for automation. And that's not necessarily to put people out of a job. The idea there is to be able to better serve the customer, to be able to reduce the need for those redundant steps in our everyday processes, those what I often refer to as non-value added steps. So where can we leverage technology to change the work that our employees are doing, not necessarily eliminate the employees, but make them more valuable in that supply chain, make them more valuable to our customers. And I think if you look at the most successful organizations out there, they're starting to look at these opportunities and they're saying, my people shouldn't be data entry people. They shouldn't be making these decisions that don't necessarily need them to look at. They should be working with our customers. They should be working with our vendors, and they should be making sure we're providing the highest level of service. So I don't think it's to get rid of jobs. I think it's to improve the service level and improve the experience that our customers have with us as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with that. And going back to my initial statement that we should use AI and BI more as decision support systems. It's going to support those decisions. We still need the people there to execute on those decisions, on those processes. So I agree with Mike where I don't think that AI is going to replace employees. It is simply just a tool. And I think that there's a misconception out there that, whenever we think of AI, we think of, the movies with the robotics and things like that. But in a way, we're already there. We're already there in Industry 4.0 with the smart manufacturing floor. You already have the robotics on the floor. Now we're taking it a step further. We're going further from that, where we're using smart analytics to make those decisions, to make organizations more efficient and to better serve the customer, as Mike said. Next question is, will AI fill the current skills gap? Now, it depends on, so I'm going to share my screen really quick, because it depends on the industry in terms of in terms of the definition of current. So this is the website from the report, from the Spiceworks report. And based on the size of the organization, if you look at the artificial intelligence adoption, based on how large the organization is, these numbers change considerably. So if you're a large enterprise with 5,000 or more, employees, then yes, it can have a impact. So 5,000 or more employees, 31% of those organizations already use artificial intelligence, compared to a small enterprise, which in the US is up to 500 employees, only 8% use artificial intelligence. So what I mean by it, well, my whole explanation is it depends on the size of your organization in terms of how quickly will we adopt artificial intelligence.
Justin, if I could just add to that, I think that part of the question was, will it fill the skills gap? And the other part, if I think just a little further down, which I think is almost in conjunction with the skills gap is, will it help us to do our jobs better? You know, those are two things that I think artificial intelligence has the opportunity to immediately have an impact on. And so one of the challenges that, especially in the distribution industry, where we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of SKUs across the potential of multiple product lines or even industries, and we hire people, and there's a need and an expectation from the customer base that they know what those SKUs are and what they do and what they're supposed to provide as a solution. Well, there's a steep learning curve for that, right? And it's hard to find those folks that have that knowledge. So, you know, simple things like, what's the products I should be recommending? Simple things like, you know, and we're all used to this when we shop online. You know, products, when we sell this, we should also be looking at that, or you may also be interested in these. Those are examples of big data analytics and you know, providing information based on historical information that all of a sudden makes that user, who doesn't necessarily have the 8 or 10 or 15 years experience in the industry, makes that user more versed in terms of what are the products, what are the offerings, what are the potential solutions that they should be offering their customers. So I think there is a great opportunity to basically make those folks better at their jobs more quickly by taking advantage of all the historical information and the big data that's available.
Okay. So we have another question here from Monica. Does your software, does the software you demonstrated integrate with existing accounting systems? And if so, which ones? Or does it mean replacing our current system?
So when I refer to Cloud Suite distribution, that is a full ERP solution. And when we say full ERP, of course, that means transactional and to the embedded backend accounting and financials. So when you look at our Cloud Suites at Infor, and the one I was specifically talking about was Cloud Suite distribution, they are true end-to-end solutions to help you run your organization. That's not to say that we don't have standalone solutions that can potentially integrate to your back-end accounting application, but for the purposes of what I was showing and some of the tools I was referring to, Cloud Suite distribution is a full solution from accounting to the transactional layer to the business intelligence and everything else we talked about.
Okay. Another question is, does the pricing science module allow the user to easily exclude data from the analysis?
Right, so that's a good question. So when we look at pricing science, and maybe just to make it a little more generic, when we're looking at these large volumes of data, I mean, when we talk about pricing science, we're looking at invoice line level detail. So if I were to, for example, pull the last 5 years of history, you know, and I don't have the calculator next to me, but let's just say we do 5,000 invoices a day or 10,000 invoice lines a day times 365 days times 5 years. You're ending up with a ton of data. And ultimately, you might want to be able to run that analysis wide open, but then realize, hey, there's a customer here that's skewing the numbers. Or for this particular customer, we had a couple large projects where we needed to be much more competitive from a pricing perspective. I want to be able to quickly exclude that data. Here's a particular vendor, or pardon me, a product group or product line where we had gotten a better buy, or we were claiming rebates over a period of time. We want to be able to exclude those rebates or run the rebate analysis separately. So the ability to then leverage and view all that data, filter down to the data that may be skewing the results, and exclude that through pricing science, again, enables you to make sure you're getting the results that you expect. And that becomes real important. This isn't a utility where you're going to go in, load data, and push the button and be done. This is truly a tool to go in and allow you to analyze those large volumes of data and make sure that the results make sense before you implement the pricing strategy. So that's a long answer. A long answer to a yes/no question, which is yes, you can absolutely define create and include exclusion sets when you're doing those runs or analytics in pricing science.
Okay. Next question is, does the Burst Analytics tool set allow for the blending of data from multiple sources into a single report or dashboard?
So, that's another great question. And that, so we showed in the beginning, we showed Burst, and that was the dashboards. And specifically, I focused on the accounts payable dashboard with the key performance indicators and some transaction level detail. All of the data that you saw there was coming from our core transactional system on Cloud Suite distribution. So just from the purchase orders and receipts and payments, etc. But with Burst, yes, you do have the ability, for example, to incorporate data from other data sources and blend that data into a single dashboard or report. And so this can often become important. If, for example, if we were thinking about sales, I may have my transaction level sales history detail coming from my ERP. I may have sales forecast information that's coming from my customer relationship management module. And I may have some sales analytics from my e-commerce solution that I wanted to blend in also. So now we can start to bring information from multiple data sources and blend it together into a single dashboard or report through our Burst toolset.
Okay. Last question is, can I define my own Coleman skills in the system?
And the answer to that question, so going back to Coleman, the Coleman Digital Assistant, the answer is yes. So what we can do is we can create or define a skill as simple as a question and response, but we also leverage our technology platform. So our API platform, our API tool set, our drill back engines, to be able to now become much more sophisticated in defining what some of those Coleman skills are. And so the answer is yes, you can define your own skills, and we've got the underlying technology platform that enables you to take advantage of the full distribution suite excuse me, and also the full suite of business logic within the application.
Okay. And what's your thoughts in terms of data security and cybersecurity for AI?
Well, so I don't know that, and Justin, I'm not sure, you may have some thoughts on this, but I don't know that I make a distinction, and certainly by no means am I an expert on cybersecurity, but I'm not sure that I make a distinction between artificial intelligence and security from an overall perspective of my technology platform. Right. So one of the key things we've done at Infor is we've partnered with Amazon Web Services. And if you look, and certainly we can provide more detail, this is a key driver in AWS in how they deploy technology. It's one of the most important elements of what they do, and it's one of the big reasons that we chose to partner with AWS to deploy our multi-tenant cloud suites.
Okay.
We would be happy, by the way, we have folks here at Infor who that's their dedicated role within the organization. So I'd be happy to get into more detail around that if there are questions or concerns. So.
Okay. All right, Kristen, that's all the questions we had. Back to you.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Mike, for both of you for sharing your expertise with us today. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up our session. From all of us here at Ultra, thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. We wish you a great rest of your week, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.